Hi, and welcome to another episode of In the Spotlight special, where we shine a light on entrepreneurs, SMEs, and innovators. I'm Maxine Crow, your host, and my next guest is no stranger to In the Spotlight. He will be joining us in just a few short moments, but whilst we get ready to talk to my next guest, I will just do a brief introduction. So, Will Polston is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and one of UK's leading business strategists and performance coaches. Will works with ambitious people, rapidly transforming their lives by empowering them to solve their biggest challenges and holding them accountable on their journey towards their dream. Will's achieved traditional success with a career as broker. Despite this, he found himself feeling unfulfilled. It was only when a surprising turn of events led him to a personal development seminar, then he finally gained the clarity that deep down, his belief that money equals happiness was not true, and that what he really wanted to do was to achieve their dreams. Will, welcome to In the Spotlight.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
So you're no stranger to in the spotlight, and however, this time we are here on this special to talk about North Star thinking. So
We are
Will,
indeed.
What inspired you first of all to write the book?
It's a great question. So I kind of grew up with a belief that money equaled happiness. Went on this tangent to kind of make as much money as I could as early as I could, and I first stumbled across a personal development book called The Secret, which many people have heard of many years ago. And what The Secret did for me, it was really quite interesting because the Secret gave me this realization that actually I had been applying a lot of this stuff without knowing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then as time's gone on, I mean, I've read hundreds and hundreds of books since. And in my opinion, there wasn't one book that had all of the fundamental components to enable someone to really master their mindset and live a life they love. So I thought that, well, it doesn't exist, so then maybe I should bring it into existence. And what I tried to do is take a lot of the slightly more complex methodologies and modalities that I've learned and simplify them down into the most usable format.
Mm. That's absolutely amazing, and so we well and know that the one that the book that you what's that saying about the book?
Yeah, it's a mentor of ours, isn't it? So it's the Daniel Priestley quote: "It's not the book you read that changes your life; it's the one you write."
Okay, and is that true in this case with North Star thinking?
Do you know what? Right, it's funny because I'd heard that quote, and maybe it's an expectation thing around, well, what for me changing my life would look like, and maybe the time frame, because the book came out in July. So at the point of recording this, 10 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And has anything drastically changed in 10 months? I can't say it has, if I'm being completely honest. However, what I do know is that it is like planting seeds. You know, there's lots of seeds that are being planted. I get messages most weeks from people saying, "Look, Will, this has been amazing," and I'm truly humbled and honoured that that's the case, because one of the big things for me was that when I wrote the book, it was something that I didn't just want to be a piece of information. I wanted it to be something that could enable people to go through transformation. So they could read it from cover to cover. They could do all of the exercises. They didn't need to sign up for the webinar or sign up for the 2-day workshop to be able to get the real value. I wanted it to kind of all be in there, and that's what's been important for me, and people have been benefiting from.
I love how you've made it really easy and accessible to just go click on the link, and then literally it just takes you straight to whatever strategy or exercise you need to do. So I really love that about the book. Just talking about the journey itself, what were the challenges that you faced when, coming up with the strategy for North Star thinking? What was your own approach to
Well,
it?
okay, so I actually got asked this question yesterday because the question everybody asks is, "Oh, how long did it take you to write the book?" And I think it's a bit of an odd question for a number of reasons. One, because years is the answer. But what I try to do, so I have this ongoing joke between like what's the difference between being efficient and being lazy,
Hmm.
and I like to regard myself as an efficient person. Some people might say I'm a lazy person, right? But what I did, over 7 years at that point, I had developed what became a 2 day workshop. It was 20 hours across 2 days. It was called Unlock Your Potential, and the workbook started off. The first ever workbook for that event was, I think, 25 pages. It was a 1 day event. By the time I finished running that workshop, because we don't run it anymore, it was a 300-page workbook. So I was just like,
Wow.
well, I just need to take this workbook and turn it into the manuscript of a book. And then I had a bunch of different podcasts. And I was like, well, I like stuff that I said, so let's just transcribe it. We'll chuck that in there. But the reality of it was trying to unpick that and change the what was being said from being in a workbook, practical workbook format, to being a
Yeah.
reading book, and taking the spoken word. I mean, it would have been a hell of a lot easier now with ChatGPT, but
Yeah.
taking the spoken word and putting it into the written word, it was, I might as well have started with a clip. And also, there would have been times when I I might have done 1 hour a month. So really,
Mhm.
did that take a month, or was it 1 hour? So you see what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's kind of been part of the process. So yeah, there's certainly some things I know now that would be different, the but believe it or not, the hardest thing was trying to condense it down, I would say, because there was so much I wanted to do. And obviously, in hindsight now, I think, well, just have a whole series of books, right? But I
Yeah.
wanted to get so much in this first one. So one of the most heartbreaking things was when I got the first edit back from the editor, and they're like, "We've taken this out, we've taken this out, we've taken this out, we've taken this out." I'm like, "No, why that bit?" But then actually, it was when you kind of put it all in hierarchy. Yeah, I could see why those bits came out, and it was more important for other bits to come in.
Wow, that's quite insightful, and I can actually relate because it took me 3 years. So it is years, unless you're really focused, no commitments, no just just focusing on that thing. So I do really get it. So
Yeah,
is there
the
going to
other
be?
thing is,
Go on.
I was going to say the other thing on that as well, and this is, I don't know if this is for other people, but it's definitely for me, right? So I cram a lot into my life, and structure creates efficiency, right? So I get loads of stuff done. However, structure kills creativity. So for me, like the idea of waking up at 5 in the morning, now I've got 30 minutes to write, like it takes me an hour to get into the creative state, to get the juices flowing. And then when I'm in it, I want to keep going for 2 or 3 hours. So what I was finding myself doing was not sitting down to do the work until I knew I had like a whole clear morning, or a whole clear Saturday morning, or whatever it would be. And that was obviously a calendar thing as well. So yeah, that was just another thing for me, was trying to get into that headspace.
That's amazing, and it is so important when you want to change the world and impact on lives. So we've talked about the writing process and the thought around why writing the book. So let's just go on to a question around North Star thinking. How does it differ to other strategy, personal development books that are out there on the market? And there are a lot, aren't there?
Because I wrote it. That's the reason why. No, a better answer to that is what makes it different. I suppose where one of my personal things that interests really is I love studying stuff, right? And I'm really curious, and I love ancient wisdom. So I've gone deep on stoicism and hermetism, and then more recent types of modalities like neurolinguistic programming, and then even sort of the various different ologies like certain physics, and yeah, I've just studied lots of different things. So I find it curious, and I'm really curious and find it interesting. So what I've
Mm.
tried to do is bring an element of ancient wisdom, albeit it's not
Yeah.
necessarily positioned as that, you wouldn't see that, but bringing an undertone of ancient wisdom, but in a way that I think's easy to understand. So I like to speak in metaphors. People listening to this will probably understand that. I use a lot of metaphors when I'm speaking and
Yeah.
communicating. So there's a lot of that. But also, I
Yeah.
think as well is that this is also based on a lot of experience, my own personal experience. And Maxine, I've worked with over 2,500 entrepreneurs, and I've done over 6,500 hours of one-on-one coaching, let alone my
Mm.
workshops and my group stuff and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of stuff, and what I am pretty good at is seeing patterns, and I've just seen
Yeah.
so many of the same patterns. You know, like, yes, we're all completely unique, but actually, when we boil it down, the patterns of behaviors, the patterns of problems are very similar. So I've just tried to
Yeah.
condense many of those in for people to be able to benefit from.
Yeah. That's absolutely amazing. And are we going to get a book to North Star thinking?
Yeah, well, do you know what? It's funny. So I the philosophy of the approach is kind of very simple. Like, have a mission in life that's the equivalent of trying to empty the sea with a spoon, right? It's so big you can never achieve it. You work towards that. It's really conscious living that provides meaning. But I do see versions of it. So, like, for example, North Star money, North Star business, North Star relationships. So then I can go deeper on the specific areas that I couldn't necessarily go further down the line. I also really want to write a book on universal laws, because I don't think that there's a one good, really good current book written for the modern day in layman's terms. You know, I like things broken down in the simplest form possible. So there's, I mean, it's not quite North Star thinking, but universal laws are what kind of all of our lives are governed by, and I think that would be a really interesting book. So that's something I want to get done at some stage.
That sounds exciting. I'm currently reading the Spiritual Laws.
Deepak
Deepak.
Chopra. Yeah,
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 I'm
yeah,
currently reading that. Again, it's a small book, but it's very intense. It's very,
yeah.
very intense.
The spiritual laws of success, I think it's called, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So I want to get into a bit of the detail now. So for our audience who haven't heard of North Star Thinking as a book, can you just walk us through the framework, the journey, and just give us some of the examples and nuggets from there that for today?
Yeah. So if you really want to kind of break it down, everything that I do, everything that focuses around is having this North Star, which is having a mission in life that's so big you accept you're never going to achieve. And the reason that I come to that conclusion was having gone through my own experience of keep having what I call when then syndrome. So when then syndrome is you set yourself a goal, you work towards it, you hit it, you achieve it, and then you set another one, and then you achieve it, and then you set another one, then you achieve it, then you set another one. And what happens, you do that 4 or 5 times, and actually you become really unmotivated. You're like, do you know what, I keep setting these goals thinking that when I get to that point, I'm going to feel okay. When I get there, then I'll feel complete. When I get there, I'll feel content. And it never happens. And then I was reading something one day, and there's quite a famous story. You've probably heard of it. Involves a baby born in December in a stable a couple of thousand years ago, and there were 3 men supposedly wise, all carrying presents, and they found this baby. Right now, just to be clear, I'm not religious, but I just saw that as such an amazing metaphor, because I thought that, well, what's really interesting was that these 3 men, they found the baby, but what was interesting in every version of that story that I've ever heard, they never went to the North Star. They were just guided by it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I just thought, wow, what if we all just had this North Star that we accepted we're never going to get to? We're never going to actually be on the North Star, but it still enables us to get our outcomes and get what we want most, right? So that for me was really what it was all about. And as I'm saying that, I've never thought of this. This is the first time this has even come into my mind as we're talking, is the fact that whilst they're on the journey, they've carried their gifts, right? And they've given their gifts. Like, that's never come into my mind until we're speaking. But that for me is what it's about. What is the gift that every single one of us have that we can be able to give to others? And it doesn't matter whether it's gold, frankincense, or myrrh. we have gifts that we can give that are valuable to other people. So there's going to have to be an updated version of the book now that I'm going to have to get that part included. But yeah, that's really what it's about, is having a goal in life that's so big you never achieve it. It enables you to create direction. You can still have milestones during that. So I believe in having kind of this roadmap, and generally speaking, like I see the future in front of me, and I've got the present where I am right now. The future is kind of out in front, and I have those milestones. But the further out the milestones go, so 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, whatever, yes, that can be still quite vague, but it's aligned with this North Star mission, and it enables me to focus. Because what that then does is it means that we can create a plan, we can create a roadmap, we can break that right down into micro actions that start getting underway. And then what happens is the compound effect of taking that action means that some amazing stuff can happen in a relatively short period of time, because all of our attention is focused and close. A little bit like if you take a standard light bulb, I'm trying to think, like the old, like the ones that hang down from the ceiling, the amount of light there, I mean, they're putting light out everywhere, but it doesn't go very far. Whereas you take a laser pen, it's so focused and it's so clear that then it can go so much further, because it's super clear on its direction and it's only going in one way.
Yeah. That's absolutely, it's amazing, because I know that lots of entrepreneurs, they struggle with having so many things to achieve. And I mean, being entrepreneurs ourselves, there's lots of spinning plates. And what would you say, and how could, just taking everything that you've said here, how could an entrepreneur or someone that's starting up, or an SME, actually take the principles of North Star thinking and apply them to help them move forward in the direction that they're seeking?
Well, one of the first ways, once you've got clear on the North Star, and we can talk about the ways of how people can get clear on it in a minute, then by basically reverse engineering where they want to be. So I tend to start further out, so 10 years or 20 years or 50 years, whatever it be, then break that down to 50, 20, 10, 5, 3, 1, 90 day, the month. Now, the other key component to North Star thinking is that we have 7 areas of life, right? We have our health and our fitness, we have our family life, we have our social life, we have our business, we have our mental or attitude, whatever you want to call it, mindset. We have financial, and we have spiritual. And a key component of North Star thinking is looking at all areas of life. So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I personally don't like the term business coach, because I don't think I necessarily coach businesses. I coach business owners, but we get into semantics to a degree. And what I believe is that every person has all 7 areas of life. And where a lot of people go wrong, let's take entrepreneurs, for example, they get these really crystal clear goals of what this 3-year vision needs to look like for the business, but they've not given any consideration to what the family life needs to look like, what their health needs to look like 3 years from now. So actually what can happen, even if they achieve that 3-year business vision, they've done it at the neglect of everything else. So their family life's falling apart, they're not getting divorced, they're super unhealthy. So it's kind of looking at stuff in a holistic way. So that's kind of another element of that approach to how we work.
And do you cover that in the book as well? Is that you're so right, because you hear there has been a saying that if you're succeed, when I used to work in corporate world, and they used to say, oh, when you're succeeding, or if you're doing really well, getting lots of promotions, that means your family's not seeing you and your personal life's kind of falling apart. And that's why it's a really bizarre way to quantify what success is, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Tony Robbins is attributed to saying success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I get it, like if you've gone all in and you've got this success, how somebody has defined success, and I say somebody, that could be parents, that could be grandparents, that could be old school teachers, that could be society, it could be a boss that has projected onto you what success looks like. Every single person has their own definition of success. And I'm a big believer that happiness is equal to or greater than expectations, but most expectations aren't communicated, whether that be to others or to ourselves. So if we haven't got clear on what our own definition of success is, then we can end up achieving something only to realize it's not what we actually wanted. It's not aligned with our values. And that leads to massive amounts of resentment, frustration, stress, and upset.
So what would you say that is the secret, or that magic potion in North Star that can help people redress that balance within those 7 areas of their lives?
One is defining it. So I've got a 3-step process that really is super simple, which is absolute clarity, intelligent action, and active accountability. So absolute clarity is just kind of knowing where you are and knowing what you want, right? In its simplest form, that's what that is. Intelligent action is taking action that's aligned with that and aligned with your values. So every single one of us has got a completely unique set of values. It's as unique as the fingerprint on the end of our finger. And what's so unique about the values is the hierarchy of them. And that those values can change in order as time goes on. They often do. And when you're living in alignment with your values, you're inspired, right? When you're living somebody else's values, you constantly require external motivation. I know if people are living somebody else's values from the language they're using. So if they're using language like I need to, I ought to, I should, it's an indication they're living someone else's values. When they're living their own values, they're using language like I love to, I choose to, I desire to. It's completely different. And the difference between inspiration and motivation is when you're in inspiration. So take the word inspiration, in spirit. What's another word for spirit? Energy. You're in your energy. So people think they burn out because they're working too hard. They don't. People do not burn out because they're working too hard. They burn out because they're not spending enough time doing the stuff that they love doing. So if you're doing the stuff that you love doing constantly in the measurements that are relevant for what you want to be doing, then you've constantly got this energy. You've constantly got, it's like a torus field that's constantly expanding and going and going and going. Or I think of it sometimes like the drilling for oil. You all of a sudden you tap the oil and it's just like it comes spurting out. That's kind of how I see it. And by getting clear on our values, so I make the distinction of different types of values. So we have what I call end values. So end values are so for example, end away values are pain, so things we want to move away from. End towards values are pleasure, right? So they're typically feelings. So feelings, I don't want to feel the feeling of shame or guilt or loneliness. And then the feelings of pleasure. Yes, I want to feel the feelings of success and pride or whatever it might be. But then we have inspiration. So our inspiration is driven from our means values. So the things that we do that give us meaning. And that's where we then feel most inspired. So my means values are self-mastery, building businesses, creating relationships, and building wealth. Now, if I'm doing those things, I feel energized, I feel infused, I feel upbeat and keep going and going and going. Like I run certain mastermind days where they can be 12-hour days, and I get to the end of the day, I have as much energy. People go, "You must be knackered, Will. You know, you're all 12 hours." I have as much energy at the end of the day as the beginning of the day because I'm doing things that align my values. Whereas about 6 months ago, I was on a call with somebody that was trying to help me, but I shouldn't have been the person on the call. They should have been on with a number of my team, and they were going through numbers with me. And like this was 45 minutes. I could feel myself slipping down the chair, you know, like melting away because it was just draining the life out of me. But yeah, long-winded answer to your question.
That's quite interesting. You saying about the energy and being actually aligned. I guess it's an alignment with your purpose, your true purpose, isn't it, as well? So does that mean that if there's an entrepreneur or someone that's just doing a job and they're constantly feeling, just take medical stuff out of it for a moment, just think about it holistically, they're constantly feeling exhausted, that the work doesn't motivate them or anything, is that because they're not following their true purpose, or they haven't found what sparks them, would you say?
Okay, so let's try and give the best answer I can, the most system. So in a nutshell, Yes, I believe so. However, I'm going to caveat that with
Mm,
I am mindful that there can be other reasons. Like if we look at the fundamentals, if they
mm,
haven't slept, let's say they've got a small baby and they've been up all night for weeks on end and they've not been sleeping, that's going to have a factor. If their diet isn't great, food, exercise, whatever, that's obviously going to have a factor.
yeah,
If they aren't exercising in a way that's beneficial to them, that's going to have a factor. If they aren't creating a form of, or aren't having a form of mindfulness, whatever that might look like to them, that's going to play a factor, right? So let's
mm,
assume all those things are equal for the time being and those are in
yeah,
check. Then yes, I believe so. And people will say things like, "Oh, but I've got a chemical imbalance in the brain and things like that." And again, just full disclaimer, I'm not a scientist here and I'm
mm,
not a medical professional. But what I do believe is that, well, then we've got to look at, well, yes, that's the symptom. Yeah, people think that's the cause, but it's not the cause, and it's now been proven that's the symptom. So then we've got to look at, well, what's the cause? And if they're not living in alignment with their values, then they're going to feel like that. Because I'm also a big believer that any negative emotion is a signal for you to be thinking or acting differently, right? So
yeah,
if we've constantly got real negative emotions, then rather than trying to bury those or just put those to one side, then we can look at them objectively and go, right, what is this getting? Is it getting me to think differently or act differently? And it comes back to that old saying. I can't remember who it was, but if you don't like something, change it, and if you can't
yeah,
change it, change the way you think about it.
yeah.
Um,
I can't remember who
and
said that.
yeah, it
I can't
might have
remember.
been Wayne. It might have been Wayne Dyer. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
When you were talking and explaining about the seven, that seven cycle, and what came to mind for me was Maslow, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So how would you compare Maslow's hierarchy with North Star thinking, or is there not a correlation there? Do you feel?
It's a great question. I've never been asked that. I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it's a really good question. I think, and I haven't got an answer that I've ever thought about on this, but what does come to mind is that there's a big difference between surviving and thriving.
Mm,
And North Star thinking is a process that enables people to thrive. Obviously, a
mm,
lot of Maslow's hierarchy is getting people to do certain things to be able to survive, and they work their way up to self-actualization, right?
mm,
So I think that it's important to acknowledge that, but I also do believe that if we want something to change, that change starts with us and it starts up here. So regardless of our situation, we have an ability to look at changing things, and start putting that out there, and start putting these practices um, to use. So there was another thing that I just thought of in relation to what we were just saying about. Which is gone, but if it comes back, then
yeah.
I'll bring it up.
Yeah. So if there was a with the book, is it a book where you have to read it from sequentially, or is it created in a way you can dip in and out and
Absolutely dip in and out.
mm, mm,
If I may just come back to the, because I've remembered what it was.
yeah.
So
Okay, good.
you said about the job, right? And
Yeah.
this is the thing that's really interesting, because in any role that anybody is in, whether you're an entrepreneur or you work in a job or whatever it is that you do, it may well be that it's not the job that's wrong. So just to be clear, if someone's burnt
Mm,
out, it's not because they're necessarily in the wrong job. But what it may well be is the things they're doing within that job,
yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense, right? So
Yeah.
for example, one of my real pet peeves, I really dislike email. So I do my absolute best to not send emails, but that doesn't mean emails don't get sent. So I actually have a
Mm,
t-shirt in my office that's hanging up on the wall that says it needs to be done, but I don't need to do it. So it may well be that when you're in a job, there might be certain parts of your job that you absolutely love. And by doing those things, it energizes and fills you up and fills you with enthusiasm. But then maybe there's other parts of your job that you could get somebody else doing. And a lot of people go, yeah, but I just couldn't get somebody else to do that. Well, maybe there's a a task swap, right? There might be
Yeah.
somebody else that's doing a job in the business, if you're working as an employee, that loves doing the stuff that you hate, and vice versa, right? And all of a sudden, then
Yeah.
more of their day gets filled doing stuff that they enjoy doing, and more of your day gets, and I'm constantly challenging my team that work for me, who are employed by me, to do exactly this, because I want them feeling inspired and enjoying stuff. So I think that's a really key thing. And the example I use with that is Disney. Have you ever been to Disney, Maxine, out of
No,
interest?
I've been to Disney Paris. I haven't been
Yeah,
to
yeah,
Florida.
perfect. That's a great
Mm.
example, right? So Disney Paris or any other theme park, right? But Disney Paris particularly, because a lot of people will say going to Disney is one of the most magical times of their life, right?
Yeah.
The memories and but then if you were to look at it logically, right? You pay hundreds and hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds in some instances, to to go to a park, queue for hours and hours and on end on concrete, to spend a couple of minutes at a time going on rides. Like, it doesn't make any sense logically, but the experience, those moments when you're not just queuing, right? They've been heightened so much. They feel so good that they outweigh the hours of queuing and waiting in the boiling hot sun, or on in the wet and the cold, depending on what time of
Mm.
year you're going, right? So that's the
Yeah.
same sort of thing in the work that you're doing. But if we can create more high moments and have less low moments, then the mean is going to be higher. And take
Yeah.
the mean being higher, that's the meaning in your life. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's a really great analogy. And then I know I'm not, I'm going off script because you're just triggering a lot of like just things around. You've talked about teams, team dynamics. So for an entrepreneur or someone that's building a team, how could they apply North Star thinking to their teams and them being efficient, and effective?
Great question. So we're like 30 minutes in and we've not even spoken about the four things. So there's four main
I know,
elements of
we'll
the
come
book,
to that
right? So
next.
there's four main elements of the book. So first of all is sort of have a North Star, right? Create a North Star trajectory. Secondly is master your time. So thirdly is around cultivating an attitude of gratitude. And fourthly is creating habits, right? So let's talk about master your time. So the
Mm.
first thing that I debunk in the book is that there's no such thing as time management. Time management doesn't exist, right? And people go, what do you mean? Well, there's 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, 365 days in a year, 366, depending on what year it is. Nobody can manage time. We all have the same amount of time. So the only thing that we can manage are our priorities. So there's a whole
Mm.
chapter in the book around how to best manage your priorities. And there's some real practical applications of things you can put in place that will be game changing to enable you to be more efficient and more effective than you've ever been before. Because as I said before, structure creates efficiency, which is great. So we want to put structure in place, but equally, not all time is equal. So, for
Mm.
example, for me personally, I call them energy hours. I'm more of a morning person. So
Yeah.
I have more energy, more creativity, generally speaking, in the morning. So those hours are super valuable. So there's certain tasks that if I do them there, those hours are worth more to me than later in the day.
Yeah.
For example, so that's one of the things that just as an example. Thirdly, so that's secondly is master your time. Thirdly is
Yeah.
cultivating an attitude of gratitude. So I'm a big believer in having an attitude of gratitude and using our perspective to change things. Because as we said before, I think it's the Wayne Dyer quote: "If you don't like something, change it, and if you can't change it, change the way you think about it." So many people are suffering on a daily basis because they want something to be different to how it is.
Yeah.
They're crazy. But what happens is they haven't got the thinking tools to be able to see something, so it becomes empowering for them, to either empowering to change or empowering to see it in a different light, which then
Yeah.
becomes freeing because they're seeing it from a place of love and gratitude rather than from a place of resentment or guilt, for example.
Yeah.
So that's super valuable. And there's a big component that I kind of intertwine with evolving your thinking and cultivating an attitude of gratitude, which is about leveling up your thinking. So I'm a big fan of Stoicism and the
Mm.
Stoic principles, but a lot of that starts with just taking responsibility, right? And responsibility, if
Yeah.
you take the word responsibility, it's your ability to respond to what's going on. I have something called the formula for life, which is E plus R equals O. So events add response equals outcome. And there's a difference between a response and a reaction. A reaction is just a amygdala's impulse, like what it's doing. A response is something that we use with our thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, the sort of executive center, if you like, to actually do something that's in line with an outcome that we want, and that's more beneficial for us. And then finally, creating habits, because as Aristotle supposedly said, excellence, what is it? Not an act. Is a habit. There. I forget
It's okay,
but essentially, it's about creating habit creation, because success, however you define your success, whatever that is a lot of small things done well day after day. It's that consistency of doing things.
Speaking about habits, so I've been to the gym, done training and changing habits, drinking more water or a bit of breakfast or doing something slightly different. But then there's this analogy of, a habit takes, 30 days to form or create? Or is it true?
I just disagree with it. Look, I mean, the thing is, right, and frankly, I just disagree with it. And I've got no other grounds, and there'll be, it's like the whole thing of statistics, right? People say statistics and well, 90% of statistics are made up or whatever it is. People say, yeah, but it's research backed, it's science backed. Yeah, but you can kind of make something be anything you want it to be. What I know with certainty, because I've experienced it firsthand and with so many other people, that if you make something powerful enough in someone's mind, they'll stop like that.
Yeah.
And if you can influence someone's mind to make it so extreme, they will stop like that. Now, obviously, there's best practices to extend that out, and there's loads of examples of that. You know, when people have had a significant emotional event in their life, and they just make that decision because the pain in that moment was so extreme, they're like, that's it, I'm never going there. And then they never go back to it. So, but then equally, there's other things that I've done for months and months and months and months on end, and then I just stop, even though I've been doing it. So I personally find that really hard. What I do believe in, though, is trying to make things easy. So if you are making a conscious decision, you want something to be a habit, then make it easy. So one of the ways that you can make something easy is there's something that you know that you do every day, then make it easy by habit stacking. So for example, I have a shower every day, most days at home, right? Some days I'm at hotels or whatever, but most days I'm at home. So I have my supplements on the shelf. So when I get out of the shower, I then take my supplements. That's now part of my routine, and I will do that. But even though I do that every day of the week when I'm at home, if I go to a hotel somewhere, I'll get out of the shower, and because they're not there and I'm not seeing them, then I won't, if they're still in my bag, I'll maybe forget to go and get them out of my bag because I've made it easy by having them on the side there. So that's just one example of being able to create habits. But when we take habits themselves, Charles Duhigg wrote a book called The Power of Habit, right? And it talks about the three parts of a habit, which is the trigger, the routine, and the reward, which was originally identified by MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and they realized there was these three components with a habit. So a trigger is the first thing that we need. So in my instance, the trigger I've made getting out of the shower, and I've made it by seeing them on the side, right?
Yeah.
That's the trigger. The routine is actually doing it, but the reward, what's a reward you get after it? Now, one of the great examples of this that got created was toothpaste, right? Like, I don't know about you, but I like brushing my teeth, and I'm going to be honest, it's not because I'm thinking that they might fall out one day. That's not the reason I'm brushing my teeth. I'm brushing my teeth because I want to get rid of that horrible furry feeling on the end of them, and I like having minty fresh breath, right? So by brushing my teeth, I get the reward of that furry feeling of them going and the minty fresh breath that feels nice, right? So that's the reward. So the trigger is if you're an adult, seeing your toothbrush on the side and doing them. When you're a kid, the trigger was, Johnny, have you brushed your teeth? You know, or going and doing it with little Johnny or whatever it is. So that's the that's that. But then every day, Johnny, come on, we're going to brush your teeth. Come on, Johnny, we're going to brush your teeth. Then it was, Johnny, have you brushed your teeth? Johnny, have you brushed your teeth? And eventually, it was, Johnny goes, I've already done it. Okay, because the trigger's been used so much that then it just becomes the norm. But then it's the reward of wanting to do it. Whereas when kids are younger, they don't see it as the reward; they see it as pain, right? So they put the pain. Oh, I don't want this thing in my mouth. No, I don't want you sitting me on your lap doing it. Like they don't want that, so they see it as pain, and that's where the opposite then comes in. If we want to stop a habit, right? If we want something that we've been doing as a habit to stop, then we create friction. And then we're less likely to do it. So one of those examples for me was, I got really into a habit of really wanting sugar after dinner every night. Well, one of the easiest things for me to do was just take the sugar out of the cupboards, because then it made it less likely that I was going to get in the car, drive to the shop and go and buy a chocolate bar because I wanted one, because I had all of that friction of having to do that. By doing that. So that's just like the opposite of creating the habit.
I've got a recent one I can share as an example, and it's quite bizarre actually, because I've got a bit of a sweet tooth, but I'm trying up for holidays and it's just so hard. So I thought, right, I am going to start buying miso soup. So anytime I get a craving for something sweet, go to the cupboard, I make myself a miso soup. And my daughter says, because when did you start drinking miso soup? I was just like, about a month ago, because I need to stop craving eating this shit out of the cupboard bread. But Will, is there anything else in terms of the North Star in the book that you haven't shared? And I've just gone off on some great conversations and different paths and routes, and it's been amazing. Anything else from the book that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I suppose, look, I never really paint it like this, but one of the real drivers of the book was 25 years ago. I really saw my dad suffer. Suffer mentally with various different things as to certain situations. And I really, if I'm honest with myself, I wrote the book that I wish my dad read 25 years ago. That's really why I've kind of written the book, and all the stuff that I've learned and applied that I kind of wish that he just picked that book up 25 years ago and read it. And the underpinned piece of this is, if you know someone that you think is going for a bit of a tough time mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever, then I believe that this is a resource that can help them. So that for me is kind of what it's there. Yes, it's about living a life you love, but it's also about getting people to take them out of really not loving a life they love. So that's really key. I think one of the things that I speak about, and look, it's one of the reasons that you do these spotlight series, is, I love the strapline: inspire, educate, and energize. Like I think it's so fantastic. And the one of the key components that I talk about is learning from role models. I talk about the ultimate peer group. So for me, the ultimate peer group is somebody that is a group of three different types of people that are a few steps ahead of you in a particular area of life, that we would call mentors, right? People you can learn from. Then we have peers, people that are about our level that we can learn something from, but they're also there to challenge us to raise our standards and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then you've got mentees. So mentors, peers, and mentees. And mentees are the people that are a few steps maybe behind you in a particular area. And I'm really mindful of saying that in a particular area, because you can have mentors that you look up to and that you admire, that have got just one area of their life that's different and how you want it, but other areas of life are not so much how you want it, and you can still learn from those people. And then equally, peers and your mentees. And I think that absolutely doesn't have to be a commercial arrangement. You know, when a lot of people think of mentors, they think, right, who am I paying as my mentor? Who's paying me to be my mentee? Like, I don't think of it like that. Like, I've got so many people that I learn from. I talk about what I call direct and indirect. So direct people I'm learning from are people I'm paying to go and watch their seminars. Direct because I'm learning, so I'm watching their YouTube videos. Direct because I'm meeting up with them for a coffee. But indirect as well are the people that I am learning through the grapevine. Like, I'm hearing about other people, or I'm reading about stories in books about them. And I think that's so important, is having that constant thirst for knowledge, knowing that that's something that can have an impact. Because I'm a big believer in what I call the ripple effect, which is when you achieve your full potential, not only does it benefit you, but it benefits your family, your friends, your community, society, humanity, the universe. And that's really the benefit. If you can wake up every day knowing that what I'm doing today to be a better person is not only benefiting me, but my family and a whole bunch of other people, I just think, like, why wouldn't you do it? And 1% of 24 hours, 1% of a 24-hour day is 14 minutes and 26 seconds. If you spend 14 minutes and 26 seconds doing something a day to improve it, listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video, reading a few pages of a book, doing some exercise, doing something to better yourself, the compound effect of that over 5, 10, 20, 30 years, it just goes so far. And it goes back to the Bill Gates quote, which is most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10. And the whole idea of North Star thinking is that if we really expand out the time frame, then we remove the doubt of what can be done. Because for most people, if you were to ask them, like, what are your dreams, the thing that prevents them in most instances of thinking whether that dream is possible is the time frame that they were going to do it within. Because if I said to you, Maxine, right, Maxine, can you run a marathon? Right, your answer would be,
my answer would be not today.
not today. Right, okay. But if you said, right, we've got 10 years, we've got 10 years to get you ready to run a marathon. Do you think you can do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yes, right? Yeah. And for the majority of people, that would be the same answer, regardless of their current health situation, fitness situation. But if I was to say to most people, right, today we're going you're going to go run a marathon, most people are like, absolutely, hell no.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, what?
So then, if we can then take our dreams, whatever it is that we truly want, regardless of what anyone else has ever said is possible for us, and we go, right, I'm going to achieve that within the time frame of my life, right? And that's the other thing that I mean, the conversation for another day. Like, I'm really into life longevity. I plan on living till I'm 150 years old. As a whole another conversation, right? So that your listeners don't think I'm completely deluded, but it's something that all of a sudden, and actually anything does become possible, because I do believe that you can achieve anything, but you can't achieve everything, at least not all at once. So if we expand that time horizon of what can be done, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, we've got so much time to be able to do so much cool stuff and fill our lives with all this cool stuff. And if we're doing stuff that we enjoy every day, every single day, we're becoming more and more fulfilled, more and more energized. And that's what I think is pretty special.
You know, it's I love that saying, impossible, and then you've got it broken as in I'm possible, which I absolutely, it's one of my favorite things. And you know, I've actually got a little tickler here for the audience. So with Will, there's his podcast. What's your podcast? Make It Happen, and some amazing guests on Make It Happen. The link to the book, and I will share that with the audience afterwards, actually, YouTube. But Will, do you in terms of North Star thinking, is there going to be a North Star thinking podcast?
Well, it's interesting you say that. So so my podcast at the moment, and I think you know this. So the I've got about 165 episodes of my podcast, Make It Happen with Polston. And my company used to be called Make It Happen. And a few years ago, we decided to rebrand as a personal brand, and now all of my coaching programs are called Evolve, like the Evolve Academy, the Evolve in the Circle, and whatnot, because it's all around this idea of evolving, and Make It Happen kind of taking a bit of a back seat. But I kept the podcast called Make It Happen because of, I suppose, sentimental reasons, because of that's what the company was kind of originally called. So we may, and it's still not been decided yet. I've had some great advice from some people, and I just need to sit down and make a decision, really. We may rebrand Make It Happen with Will Polston to be called North Star Conversations, but that hasn't. So it's not going to be a new podcast. We're more than likely to rebrand the existing one, but we haven't actually decided that for sure yet. So watch this space.
I will with bated breath, because I know anything that you do, and just for our listeners and audience, if you haven't read North Star Thinking, it's enlightening no matter what stage you are in your journey, whether it's personal, whether it's in business, whether you're an entrepreneur. North Star is just that handy tool that you can have in your bag and you can pick it out. And also all the resources are really accessible as well. It's literally just a click of a link. And Will, you through your dedication and time to actually writing this book for us all to absolutely enjoy and make our lives better.
Thank you. No, thank you very much for.
On that note, I was going to ask you, how can the audience come to and get and be inspired by your thinking?
Thank you. So on all the socials, I'm Will Polston. So whether that's Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, like all the socials, TikTok, whatever. But then if you've been particularly inspired by something, then drop me an email, will@willpolston.com. And yeah, would love to hear from you. And if you want to check out the book, you want to get the book, then you can head to Amazon or and any kind of online retailer. You can get the book. There's a handful of actual retail shops that have got the book as well, but Amazon's normally the easiest place for most people.
Thank you. Well, this has been an absolutely amazing honor and pleasure to spend time with you this afternoon. This has been another Spotlight special with Will Polston, author of North Star Thinking. Well, thank you for today.
Thank you for having me. Really grateful for being here. Thank you very much.
Until next time.